Welcome back, everybody, to part 2 of Gabriel and Miguel. I hope you enjoy this, as they're really going to drop some insightful stuff, and hopefully it will inspire you. Enjoy. We have been talking about how prayer is a muscle, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking a lot about praying in tongues, and which is great. It's an awesome conversation to have. But you notice that none of us are showing you how to do it or telling you how to do it. It's because it's like everything else. It's a gift. It has to be given to you in person, and if you want it, you should get your ass to a church and ask for it, because it's one of the most powerful things that you can do. But you have to, just like prayer, you got to go somewhere and be present and ask someone to give it to you. Someone will ask you if you want it, but you still have to say yes. And we talked a lot about building the muscles of prayer, right? And there's two reasons we talk about that. One, so we can access that power more readily, have it more readily available, be better at praying, be more precise with our prayers. But it's also, we do it, and we should keep doing it, because the devil never stops working out his muscle. Like the devil is always outside doing one-handed push-ups all the time. He never stops training. He never stops trying to get inside your mind, inside your heart, inside your ears, right? So that's why prayer is vital. We have to keep up with what the devil is going to try to throw at us, because he wants to pull us away just as bad as God wants our love, right?
And to kind of give a different visual, because we keep saying it's a muscle, and I think most people will think of weightlifting or CrossFit, but I think what we're actually referring to is, for example, I have 3 children, like I said earlier, and the way I talk to my oldest doesn't necessarily work when I speak to my youngest, right? So when we say it's a muscle that you have to work out, it's like any relationship, right? The more you get to know each other, you kind of develop your own language, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah,
so when we're saying it's a muscle that you need to work out, is that literally as you get to know God at an intimate level, you start to develop and find ways to communicate that work for each other. Because we're all different individuals, and God's going to treat each and every one of us the way it works for us.
Yep.
So that's what we mean by a muscle that needs to be worked out.
That's good. Thank you for that was very good that you clarified that. So let's talk about that. So I guess in the sense we're talking about clarity, right? What are some specific, like in your opinion, what are some misconceptions people may have about prayer? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what do you think are some of the misreads that people have about prayer and prayer life?
I think Miguel started earlier with one of them, which is that your prayer, the longer it is, the more holy and the more in tune that you are with God. And that's not true.
That's good, yeah. And misconception 1, it doesn't have to be a long prayer to do a lot of work.
No. And number 2 is be yourself. You're in a relationship with God. Like, God loves you. He fearfully and wonderfully made you. Like, I don't want to sound like Miguel when I pray.
Right.
And God doesn't want me to sound like Miguel.
Right.
So I think that's another misconception. Like, people tell themselves it needs to sound XYZ. It doesn't. God loves you the way you are. In my case, I don't filter my prayers at all.
Right. It's like God made everybody's cookie different, so don't be cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Right.
And to clarify, I'm not saying that I'm irreverent when I go into his presence, but I don't feel the need to, like, if I'm feeling a certain way, I tell him how I feel. I don't sugarcoat it. I don't go like, well, Lord, like if I'm scared, I'm going to tell him, like, I'm freaking out, Lord. Like, what is going on? I don't get it. I'm not going to go like, you are my strength and which he is.
Right.
But he can take it. He can take you being afraid. He can take you
You wouldn't talk that way to your own dad. Your son wouldn't come up to you and in pain and say, Dad, I'm feeling great.
I know you can heal me.
Yeah. You're going to see through it. Like, no.
So, and then the other misconception is, which Miguel also touched on it, is it's not always going to look the way you envision it.
Mm-hmm.
So have that degree of flexibility along with expectation, because
God,
you'll
that's
be able
so
to
good.
see
That's so good.
when God shows up.
I think that's why I think that's why, like I said earlier, how I only pray in the morning and then I have a hard time just praying at any time during the day. I think it's because I have in my head it's supposed to look a certain way. Like, no, I'm not going to pray in the car because I'm in the car. And where's my altar, right? That's really good. I just learned something. Yeah, that's a good misconception. It doesn't have to look like you thought it was going to look. Good.
And then I'll let Miguel tackle.
I was gonna say, can I have one?
Yeah, go
You said
for it.
like 10 of them. That's pretty good. I'm impressed.
He did. He knows all the misconceptions, but he did reference you like 5 times.
I did notice that too.
For
so I
two
felt
of
like-
them, yeah.
I
So
felt like I
technically,
was
only one of
included.
them was mine.
I felt included in that conversation. I feel like one of the biggest misconceptions that I've seen is that people think in order for you to pray, you need to memorize the Bible or know the Bible so well. Or it's almost like they take it as I'm not good enough to pray because I don't know the Bible, and that's false. Like it's funny. It's funny to me because there are stories where people have healed people that have only heard one worship song and literally repeat the word Jesus, and people are healed. And it has nothing to do with knowing the Bible or not knowing the Bible, but the faith of believing in the word and the man and the God of Jesus. And so prayer is the same way in the sense that you don't have to know the Bible. You just have to have faith to know that when I pray, I'm literally having a conversation with God, and he is listening.
Yeah, because it's not the words that are as important as the heart.
It's the heart. It's the words coming out of your heart. Like how, like Gabriel talked about how amazing being a father is and fatherhood and experiencing things for the first time with your children. And then you kind of look at, oh my God, this is probably what God is thinking of me. Like, what are those times when my daughter has said, I love you for the first time. And it was just like, oh, that's it. Like,
And that's a perfect example of being expectant of God speaking to you, right? It's like when Adriel started beating me up, which she does on a daily basis. Adriel is my son, my youngest. I remember, for whatever reason,
He's
first
2
time...
feet tall, by the way. Just so
but he beats me
if
up
you're
so good.
imagining like some 6'4" son being up, no, he's 2 feet tall and he wrecks his dad.
He does. But I recall, going back to what you were saying, he's jumping on my head, and then his back, it's literally like on my ear, and I heard his heartbeat, and this joy came over me. I was like overwhelmed just at the sound of his heartbeat. And immediately I felt God tell me, that's how I feel about you.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Isn't that great when you feel those little things too? And so that goes back to like, what does it mean when we say, because you hear people say, and there's two extremes, right? There's people say, you know, God spoke to me in this, and I heard God say this. What does that mean? Like we always say, like, do you hear it? Do you see it? You know, is it in your mashed potatoes? Right? Is it? What does that mean when you say God spoke to me?
So going back to where I was clarifying the muscle that needs to be worked out, right? The more time you spend with God, the easier it is to hear him, because you know his voice, you know the ways that he reaches out to you. So for example, in my younger days, I depended a lot on prophets and pastors and leaders to speak life over me. And I like to use this example from the Bible, which is Samuel. So the Bible says that Samuel served the Lord, but didn't know the Lord. And the first time that God called him, if you notice, God chose to use a voice similar to Eli.
Oh, because he thought it was his dad.
Yeah, so because otherwise, if you think about it, I believe Samuel was around 12 years old when that happened, when God called him Samuel. So if I'm a 12-year-old in my room and I hear a voice that I don't know calling me at night, I'm going to freak out.
Yeah.
I'm going to freak
That's like
out, and
Freddy
I'm running.
Krueger.
I'm
Yeah.
running out of that room.
Gabriel.
And I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
And I'm not coming back. So what does God do? he makes himself sound like Eli,
Yeah.
which already knew God, which I think it's amazing. So you see this interaction where when he was a young boy, right, God speaks to him
That's good.
with the sound of Eli's voice, and then Eli proceeds to tell Samuel, which the Bible doesn't put it this way, but technically, right, if I'm Eli, this is what's going through his mind. He's like, God is speaking. So then he basically tells Samuel, like, do what I used to do. And the next time you hear the voice call you, answer, Lord, here I am. So it's the same way when it comes to God's voice. But even now in this stage of life, God sometimes will still speak through others. So it's not it's not a fixed, like, it only happens this way and in this window of time. Like I said, it can happen.
So again, God can speak to you in multiple different manners.
You just have to be receptive to it. But God will speak to you based on the degree of maturity and understanding that you have, because he doesn't want to freak you out. And I think Samuel is a perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Miguel?
Kind of want to share of the time when I realized that I needed to start praying for myself. Because I shared that my mom was very involved in the Catholic Church, and I've seen her pray over our family's lives. But I was stationed in Korea, and I would literally come home once a year for a month. And in this particular instance, I came home for about 3 days, and my plan was to just visit home so I can see my family, because I only see them once a year. And then I was going to spend the rest of my time somewhere else, away from the family, doing things I wasn't supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. And I remember that when I was doing the things I wasn't supposed to be doing for the other 3+ weeks, I had a dream that my mom walked into a room, catching me red-handed and saying, "What are you doing here? Like, you're supposed to be home with your family." I remember it was so vivid that I woke up kind of freaked out. Like, first of all, what is my mom doing where I'm at, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where the next day I wake up and something crazy happens where I was just like, I'm not going to sit here and be in this environment when I can be home with my family.
Yeah.
It almost turned into a prodigal son moment.
Wow.
Where he realizes, like, I'm here eating this pig slop. I could be at home as a servant.
Yeah.
With where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I remember I went home. I took a plane back home to spend the last 2 weeks with my parents, with my fam. And my mom was surprised. I said, "I thought you weren't coming back." And she had this smirk on her face. And I looked at her and I said, "Hey, Mom, by any chance, did you pray while I was gone?" And she was like, "I pray for you every day." I was like, No. But like specifics, like, did you pray specifically for something? She's like, "Well, yeah. When you left, I just started praying that God bring you back so I can see you again."
Wow.
And at that moment, I knew that, man, I'm a grown man at this point. I need to stop depending on my mom's prayers for me to have that with God directly.
Yeah.
For the protection of God, I need to stop depending on my parents' prayers and somebody else's prayers to protect me, and just start praying those prayers of protection over myself.
Wow.
And the people that I care about. So that's literally when I saw God move. He answered in a dream of my mom's prayer, and I saw the power in that. And that's when I was just like, oh man, prayer is powerful, and I need to start doing it for myself.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's legit. Like, that's a total different way, but that was definitely God speaking to you through like multiple different ways.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Through the dream, through your mom,
Yeah.
through just your own intuition, right? Sometimes pulling sometimes like a pulling in your heart, it can be God speaking, right?
Yep,
You know,
100%.
Like, I remember there's been 2 times where in my life where I've been like, yeah, that was God. And they were just like both times. One was me running. Both times I was running, but I prayed like, God, give me an answer. Should I do this? And I've heard like an immediate, like I don't know if it's a word, but you just felt an immediate. One time I felt like an immediate yes, and another time an immediate no. But I didn't doubt that at all. I was like, that happened way too fast for me to be thinking that, right? That like because I'm like my brain would not answer it that quickly, and it was like a quick exhale, and it was. And I could even say that wasn't even words; it was just more of my gut. But that's another way that God can speak, right? And that's the thing. Since He created the world, He can communicate in any which way that He wants to, right? He can use any avenue.
And it's funny too, because sometimes He'll use our wives to do so.
100%. Well, I mean, isn't that in the Bible? That
Yeah, but we're and our stubbornness sometimes, right? And this has happened to me. I'm sorry, baby. This has happened quite a few times. She'll say something to me and I'll listen to her, but I won't really acknowledge it till I hear it from somebody else. So it's almost like God kind of saying like, oh, Gabriel, let me repeat it one more time so you can understand that it's me that's speaking to you. So I'll literally hear the same thing my wife told me like a few days ago from somebody else. And then I'll come home and I'll be like, baby, I'm sorry. You said it 3 days ago and I wasn't receptive to it.
Yeah, that I feel like that's a common thing. Like, I don't know why we fight, we resist that muscle too, right? Like to not listen to their wisdom. When same kind of thing happened with me, and God will wait for you to do that submission, right? To give in to Him, and just like with your wife, it's like she'll tell you 1,000 times, and you won't listen until you hear someone else say it, and then you realize it was right? And God. When I moved back home to deal with my addiction, okay, and I was like, I'm gonna handle this, and I kept feeling I felt the urge to come back here to San Diego to church, and I kept having the same reoccurring dream. And it was I would be in this dream, and I would want to drink, and I would always be in a car, and I would say, "Get thee behind me, devil," and immediately there would be this arm on my shoulder, and there's someone in the back seat, and it was the devil. And he's right in my ear, and he goes, "I am right behind you, and I'm not going anywhere." And I couldn't pray him off. I could not pray. I'm praying in my dream to get rid of the devil, and I just couldn't do it because I was still kidnapped, right? And I still thought that, and addiction has so much shame to it that it's hard for you to fully believe that God's going to help you because you're so ashamed that there's a part of you that's like, I don't deserve it, right? And this is new to me with addiction. I've come to realize that addiction is the devil kidnapping you. Addiction is a method for the devil. The devil kidnaps you.
Right.
He takes you away. He takes you away from your family. He takes you away from yourself. He takes you away from it. It's a way that he holds you. Addiction is a kidnapping, and God is, and so there's shame there, right? So it's hard for us to believe that God wants us back when we've done so many things wrong. But the way that God doesn't just lightly want us back from addiction, right? It's He wants us back so bad, right? Like He loves us so much that He's not like patiently waiting, like, yeah, Bill, figure it out, it'll get better. It's like that movie. You ever seen the movie Ransom with Mel Gibson? When he's looking at TV and he's like, "Give me back my son!" That's
pretty good.
Give me back my son.
That's good.
That's how God looks at us, right? That's how God is wanting us to come back. He's like, "Devil, give me back my son!" And that's what happens when you get. And that's how we are. If we give me back my family, give me back my daughter, give me back my mother, give me back my job, give me back my broken relationships. When we come back to God, when we rely on God, we get that stuff back.
And
right? and that's how bad God wants us back. He wants us back because there's no words to explain it, right?
And
Sorry,
it's like
freaked out there, but
it's really powerful, good. Yeah. It's like, and that's what I love about the prodigal son story. And we may be deviating here a little bit, but
yeah, that's fine. I like it.
It's like if you think about it, right? How would the father know what the son was doing? That means that even after the son left, the father was still, in some regard, looking after him, right? And then the fact that he saw the son coming back from far off means that every day he waited for the son. He hoped on behalf of his son. He believed on behalf of his son every day. And revisiting something I said earlier about trying to understand the depth of God's love for us. Don't you think it's interesting that addiction and shame go hand in hand?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they hold hands. Like they just absolutely.
Because I think addiction is a weight, right? And shame is the vehicle, right? Because it doesn't make sense, right? That anyone would want a broken vessel. Nobody goes to the store and goes, I want, like, show me your broken vessels. That's what I want. And I'm going to pay top dollar. Everything I have in my savings, in my checking, and that the next X amount of money I'm going to make, that's God. Like God goes, I love you. I want you. And then he gives his one and only son. Like it doesn't make any sense at all.
He's raising his hand.
I don't want to interrupt.
You're saying
so
something
I
really
raised
good.
my
I love
hand.
it.
I want to say, to piggyback off of both of you, said that's the importance of having community. A lot of people steer off from, I don't want to come to church. I don't need church to have a relationship with God. And it's true. However, the power of the enemy is in separating you from the main body of Christ. And best example that I've ever heard about either being a part of a church or not is a relationship. It's like, you don't need to be together sleeping in the same house to be married. I mean, once you're married, you're married.
Mm-hmm.
But don't expect a warm hug when you get home.
Yeah.
Like if there's a separation, there's not a relationship. And the power of being in a community, in a church, is that you're surrounded by like-minded people, that we have these conversations that we're having right now, and we start realizing, oh, you're not alone. I went through that too. Mm-hmm. And the power behind that is that now there's hope because you overcame it. And so now I'm listening to your story, or you're listening to my story, telling you how I'm struggling with something, and you can, with a straight face, say, "Hey, I prayed about that, and this is how I overcame it."
Well, you know what? It's not just that you overcame it. It lifts the shame, right? So if I walk in somewhere and I'm like, I suck, there's no one else that's screwed up as bad as I have. Like no one else has done X, Y, and Z, and it's just you're weighed down by shame, right? All of a sudden you hear the same story, and that feeling of being the worst person in the world evaporates, right?
Yeah.
It just evaporates. It's like, holy crap. Well, look, he had that happen to him, and he's here.
And he's okay.
And he's okay, right? And that's why we go through so many things, right? God knows what we can survive.
Right.
God would never put us through something that he knows we can't survive.
But also, how beautiful is it that Jesus is on the cross, right? And one of the thieves just asked, like, remember me when you get to heaven. And Jesus goes like, I'm telling you that today you will be with me in paradise, right? But how many of us, like, for whatever reason, convince ourselves that, no, we need to make amends, we need to clean ourselves up before we show up to church and before we surrender ourselves to God. And he's saying like, no. Like, I don't need any of that. I love you just the way you are with your brokenness and the things that you yourself don't want to address or look at. I love all of it.
He's never far away.
Nope.
Right.
Never.
They even in the Bible, when it says Jesus was a great distance off when they saw him walking on water, right? And when was it Peter that stepped out, right? And when Peter sank, he grabbed him before he was underwater.
Right.
So God covered that distance immediately, right? So he's never, even if you think he's far away or he looks far away, he's always right there. He's always around the corner. And that's what kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and another distinct, like I'm a prodigal son every day. Every morning, I'm a prodigal son.
Yeah.
And every morning, he waits for me and he greets me every day with the same joy that we see in the prodigal son story, because which is beautiful if you really read it and ask questions like he ran, and then he says that essentially he hung from his son's like neck and kissed him on his neck, like the closeness in that. He didn't say go take a shower, clean up. Like the dad didn't care. So and I'm so thankful for that, because like I said, I'm a prodigal son every day. Every morning when I wake up, I'm a prodigal son.
Except that you don't go out spending all your money and then coming back every day.
Correct.
Got it.
And just to clarify,
So the cool thing about that is that, and I kind of almost want to ask you this: can you say a prayer without realizing it's a prayer? Like in those moments where you were going through that moment of feeling shame and isolating yourself, like, can you accidentally pray to God without intentionally trying to pray to God? Like, what does that look like?
I think so, 100%.
But what does that look like?
Okay, like in my case, right? It would be literally like, and I'll catch myself. I'll be like, what am I doing?
That's a prayer.
Yeah, that's a prayer.
Yeah.
Like I'm not talking to myself.
yeah,
That's a
Yeah.
prayer. Or even there were seasons of my life where I would literally go like, what are you going to do with this kid of yours?
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
it's like even I'm like, I'm disappointed in myself.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I've had moments where I literally had to just out loud be like, help me. Help me. I can't do this anymore. And without even realizing it, it's a prayer. I'm asking for help. I'm surrendering at that point.
Well, someone said this to me once, and I stole it, and
It's yours.
it's mine. Where they say, if you're gonna be a copycat, find a good cat to copy.
Hey.
Yeah, so consider
pop,
this
pop, pop, pop.
consider
Wait,
this
that
the
was a machine
official
gun. Edit
copywriting
that
of
out.
this
Yeah,
statement.
but the what were we just saying right now? We were talking about
Accidental prayers.
accidental prayers, and then you said that all those pops really got in my brain. I forgot. I popped the thought right out of my head.
You were going to share how you stole this from someone, some particular saying.
Oh yeah,
or-
what you just said. What he said is the most powerful prayer that he can say. The most powerful prayer he says is, "Help me."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and I equate that like that's the next step prayer to just praying in tongues, because that's what praying in tongues is.
Yeah.
It's like, help me.
That's good.
Like,
Yeah. I feel like there's power in transparency, and that's why I love Awaken Church. So I'm going to be transparent. Within like the first 3 years of our marriage, it was very difficult. And I was struggling with pornography. And I didn't want to admit it to myself. And I can think of a billion
that's the hardest
excuses.
person to admit it to.
Right. And I can think
100%.
of a billion reasons to justify it. And I was telling myself it wasn't affecting my marriage, but I was a lie. And I remember sitting down with my wife, and we both prayed this prayer, and it was a dangerous prayer. Shed light in the areas that need to get shed. Put it on the spotlight so we can deal with it and move on. Unbeknownst to me, the prayer was about me. And I kid you not, like a day later, she catches me. And we had to go through it
Yeah.
and deal with it. So one,
Shed that
we
light.
can strengthen the marriage. And two, he was shedding the light on the things that needed to be dealt with. And that was a dangerous prayer because nobody wants to deal with that.
Yeah, nobody wakes up one morning and is like, hey, let me show my wife my brokenness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous prayer, but it's a necessary prayer.
Yeah. And you said something interesting too. Maybe that's the prayer that we should all be praying. You know, show me my brokenness. Like show me the dirtiest, most broken things that I need to fix before they get out of my control and they get in someone else's view.
Which is why I love King David, where he prays, search me, Lord, and know my heart. Right? That would be a dangerous prayer, right? But it is 100% a necessary prayer. And by the way, the timing of God is because maybe at the time you were like, "Oh man, party foul," right? But I'm at least in my marriage, I know that God has prepared Jessica for those moments,
Mm-hmm.
for those moments of, and if anything, Jessica has been a mirror of how God loves me.
I thought it was me.
Sometimes,
That I was your mirror.
sometimes,
Just sometimes.
just sometimes,
Mm.
mostly Bill, but sometimes.
I can see that.
And since we're being open, right? It's for me. I didn't get caught with the pornography.
Until now. Sorry, Jessica.
No, I had to. It was after like I said, after an emerge and after a dangerous prayer where, I decided, knowing that God loves me, understanding but knowing that He loves you gives you license to kind of have abandonment
Mm.
with your heart, to trust Him to go in there and show you the things that you yourself don't want to look at. So I think for Jessica, Emerge conference has been like, because I come back and it's like, surprise. This is what God dealt with and this is what shifted. But this last time dealt with sexual abuse and pornography.
Mm.
So, and that's where the broken vessel part comes from it, because I remember, once again, for those of us that have been to Emerge, the first thing you do when you come home is you take a shower.
Because you basically, context, you sleep in the desert for like 3 days in a tent, and during the day you're doing like a combination of physical activities and watching like great pastors. So long story short, you're
kind of
dirty
filthy
and nasty when you
Yeah.
come home.
It's probably one of the best. Sorry to just caveat on this, because I think it's really important to explain the importance of this conference. So it's probably right now, I would say, dare to even say it's one of the biggest men's gatherings in San Diego, where men show up and first of all, they get a piece of wood and they put everything that they don't want to leave with. So that you come to this place, some of them broken, some of them wanting to experience God for the first time. And you write down your burdens, is what we call it, on this piece of wood. And the intent is that we're not going to leave with whatever you write
It's
on
called a
this thing.
burden board.
Burden board. And then
and it still takes courage, because trust me,
it does.
I didn't want to write sexual abuse on my burden board.
Well, and what we do is we write on these burden boards, and I would almost encourage you to do this at home on a piece of paper. Write down everything because it's just like prayer. Prayer is the physical activity of you opening your mouth to communicate with God. And God's waiting. It's basically you pull the trigger on God's power, because He knows that with the bullets are in the gun, He made them.
Right.
And He's ready to activate. And so prayer is you pulling that trigger. Same thing with you writing things down. So I would almost encourage you to write down your burdens, what are the things that you struggle with, things that you would like to be shaken off, prayed off, burnt off, whether it's anger, anxiety, addiction, pornography, fear, trauma from the past,
Right,
and write that down. So what we do with these boards is we don't just write them on the boards, but we wear these boards for the next 3 days, and we literally tie a string around them, and they're uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it's a competition.
And it's supposed to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it's a competition. There's points involved, and there's a series of games, of athletic games that you do as a team, and then there's a bonding moment with you and your team that kind of mirrors the community aspect of why it's important to be around like-minded
100%,
men,
yeah.
right? Because there's some men that have never experienced have never had an example of what a man looks like. And so for a lot of them, this is their first time being surrounded or even have a hard time making friends with guys, with men. And so we go, we compete. We listen to word that's specific to our time as a man, as a father, from pastors all over the world. And then at the end, we burn the burdens, and what was felt heavy now feels lighter. And so when he says that you go home, you literally shower, you shower because you stink. Like some of those jokers don't shower because you're camping for 3 days.
Yeah.
And so afterwards, you almost have like, if you're married, you have this moment with your wife.
When you say too, just to clarify, when we burn the burden boards, like they make a giant, they make a series of giant fires, and you sit there and someone prays on what's specifically on the board and prays it off, and you throw it into the fire, and you sit there and you watch it burn. And it sounds simple, but it's one of the most liberating, amazing things in the world. And so, like, what you're also washing off yourself, other than the dirt and the stink, are the ashes of your past self, is what you're washing off when you get home. Well, for most of us, the first thing that we do when we get home, honestly, is when we see our wives, we pretty much break down and cry. Is like, that's usually what happens with me.
Yeah, I did it in the shower, though.
Yeah. With your wife?
No, she wasn't in the shower. I was in the shower.
That's what I thought too.
I was like,
oh, that's the next level. Emerge man.
I tried
to get home, but
and to clarify, because if you're wondering what's the point of writing any of this on a piece of paper, and what's the point of putting it on a burden board? It's simply this, and I understood this when I met my wife: free will, right? I'm convinced that the only reason we have free will is because God couldn't bear the thought that we love him back because he programmed us to do so. Like, he can't bear the thought.
That's good.
And that's how I felt when I met my wife. Like, the thought that she was with me because she was forced to, or because she felt she needed to, like, I couldn't bear that thought. Like, she had to want me because she wanted to, out of her own will. So when we write these things on the burden board or on a piece of paper, like Bill said, what you're doing is you're using your free will to tell God, I trust you to go in those areas of my heart and remove the pain and remove the hurt and remove all the crap that I've been piling on in this segmented portion of my heart. Because pain and suffering, that's what he does. It'll segment a portion of your heart. God was telling me, like, which is why prayer is so powerful. God was telling me 20 years ago, I gave you 1 Corinthians 13, almost as a prophetic word of how
for that
she would love me in that moment. Yeah. How she's loved me throughout our relationship, really. And I completely lost what my train of thought was going, but I figured I would close it.
This segment brought to you by Emerge.
Seriously.
Please send
and Pathfinder.
And Pathfinders. This segment brought to you by Emerge and Pathfinders. Please send the free tickets to Bill, Gabe, and Miguel. Thank you.
And sponsored by Kingdom Come. Thank you very much.
And Kingdom Come. If I may, it's funny that you said that, because the power of prayer, right?
Pop.
I also had a moment before I proposed to my beautiful wife, Sandra, and during the engagement season, something happened where she saw something about my past, and she literally gave me back the rings.
Whoa.
And she took off. And I remember at that moment, I knew she was the one. And I remember praying, having that conversation with God. I said, God, if this is really who you want me to be with, if it's true that this is the one for me, like, I know that she's the one for me. I need you to help me out, because I can't do this on my own. Like, this is beyond me. Like, I don't have the wisdom. I'm not smart enough to overcome this by myself. And literally in my spirit, he was like, listen, I want you to remember this moment, and I want you to remember this prayer, because from now on, it's going to get hard and you're going to have to endure, but I'm going to walk with you the entire time. Are you ready for that? And I don't know if I was just dumb, in love dumb, or I was just in the moment of, I was so happy that he answered me. I was just like, I'm willing to do anything. Talking about a dangerous prayer.
Yeah, I'm willing to do anything.
I'm willing to do anything. And it's interesting because God has brought us closer together in the first 5 years of our marriage. I can honestly say the first 5 years of our marriage was one of the most difficult things I've ever endured.
But what is?
But he remember every time that would happen, he would show me the vision of that prayer that night, where he was like, "I told you this was going to happen, but I also told you I was going to walk with you the entire time."
Because what is? I will do anything. What is that? What are you doing?
Right?
You're surrendering. You're surrendering.
That's it. That's it. And if you allow yourself, and I think that's one of the things about prayer that's powerful, is that you're allowing yourself to be moved by God. You become the vessel that God works through. Mm-hmm. And one of the most and it's in the Bible how powerful prayer is, because even when Jesus was casting out demons and he gave the power to his disciples to cast out demons in his name, there was an instance where they couldn't cast out this particular demon from this kid, from this little boy, and they were like, "Well, what's the difference? What's happening right now? We've done it before. Why can't we do it right now?" And they go for Jesus, and Jesus shows up and just like, "You dummies," and he casts them out super quick. He's like, "Well, where's your faith?" Just like, "What are you talking about? We did everything you told us to do. What was the difference?" He's like, There are some demons, there are some things that could only be casted out through prayer. And at that moment, it paints a beautiful picture of the power of prayer. Mm-hmm. You don't even need to be there touching them. You can just say a prayer and it can just happen.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a guest on that told a story. His mother, she had been away from God and she was in dire straits, and she was made up in her mind. She was like, "I'm going to get down on my knees and pray to God." And before she started to kneel down, but before she got to her knees and said a thing, there was a knock at the door and a miracle happened. Like just that, the instinct, like
the willingness to
willingness. Submit. Yeah. Because God was like, "All right, she's all in. Like, I'm going to help her now because I know where she's going." But, because God's got his timing, right? Anything that we haven't covered?
Get out of your head.
Yeah, 100%.
When you pray, don't think about it too much. It's not that time to think. It's time to surrender.
Love it.
And like, it's like, it would be like you and I talking. When I'm going to ask you a question, I don't preface it with a bunch of, like, I don't prep the ground. We're friends. We have a relationship. I just say it. So don't overthink it. Don't feel like you have to filter everything. Just go for it.
Right. Nobody ever says, "Oh, Puerto Rican with the beard and the mustache, that you are so wise that the things that come out of your mouth are just wisdom gold." Nobody ever says that to you.
Yeah.
Sometimes
They just say, "Gabriel, I need help, man. Can you do that for me?"
Yeah. So authenticity, right? Just be real.
Yeah, be real.
But then also,
better way to put it,
have endurance. There's things in your life, yes, God can do them in an instant. And there's others where there's a process.
Yeah.
You have to go through.
Just God's timing.
Yep. Well, so have endurance.
So that's something for people to remember too. It's like your prayers aren't just going to get answered.
Oh, that's another podcast right there.
Right? They're not just going to get popped off. Ooh. They're not instantly like, your hair's not going to grow back instantly.
I believe it.
I mean, there are miracles.
Maybe.
There's a difference between prayers coming to miracles, but trust God's timing. Be yourself. Speak to him as you would you. What's something you would never do in prayer?
Oh man, I've done so much in prayer.
What's something you've done in prayer and you've like kind of regretted it? Like just in like your talk with God.
Limit God. So when I say limit God, so when I say words like, "God, can you please?" God.
That going back to the definition of hope.
If you're not busy, can you just, when you have time? Because that's putting God in a position where we're limiting him, and he, at that point, he's not all knowing. He's not God of the impossible anymore. He's the God of we're inconvenience him.
Okay, so don't act like you're inconveniencing him. So don't please, don't can you?
Yeah, he will.
And you know what's the solution to that? It's having
Spanish.
No, it's having. Well, yeah, Spanish is the solution for 99% of the issues in the world. Puerto Rican Spanish, by the way. Let's clarify that.
We're gonna edit that.
It's having shameless audacity.
That's good.
Ooh,
that's the solution to that.
Shameless audacity.
Yeah, which is, that God can do anything. So have the shameless audacity to ask, right?
Yeah.
Which is basically what you were saying. Like, don't put limits on God, and you do that by asking for some ridiculous things. Just
That's
'cause you
great.
know that God
be
can
a
do it.
be a no limit soldier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
That's good. I like that. I am like I think I don't know. I mean, I've said things to God before where I'm like, God, that was stupid. You know what I mean? Like I've caught myself apologizing over and over for things, and I've like I don't know if it's God or myself. I've just felt myself go, dude, stop. Like stop. Well, you wasted 5 minutes telling me how sorry you are. I know.
No, that's
You're
God.
hard. Right? That's
Yeah,
God.
that's God.
It's like I know it. Like, dude, like
I know you.
yeah, I know you. Right? Remember, that's another tip. Remember that God knows you. God knows you. Right? So
Yeah.
speak to him like somebody that knows every bad thing. Right?
Yeah.
Because he does.
This is a good talk, but I think we're over. I think we're over time.
Yeah.
But don't worry, we'll be back.
Pop.
We'll be back again just because we have matching shoes and we forgot to wear them.
Saying things out loud
Saying things out loud.
is a powerful
Prayer
tool.
tip. Pop tip. Say things out loud.
That's
But
Talk to God.
also prayers in your heart, because I've used that quite a bit. In fact, when I
Wait,
arrived,
what's a prayer in your heart?
like I don't say it out loud at all. It's
It's the opposite of what I just said.
yeah, but I'll explain why. Like,
But like, so what's the difference between? Okay,
We're gonna edit
explain.
that. We're gonna edit that out too, Bill.
no, because there's
We're
seasons.
editing nothing.
But no, but like I said, everybody has their own
That's true.
style that works for him. For me, in critical moments, I don't want to give the enemy any room to introduce confusion. So there's certain things I question God with that I only say them in my heart. That's it. I never say them out loud until he answers me. So I'll give you a quick example. So when I arrived at Awaken Church 3 years ago, it didn't feel like home. I'll be honest, I didn't like something felt weird. And I remember one of my prayers was, internal prayer was like, Lord, I'm not getting any younger. I don't want to spend the next decade in the wrong place. So, like, please just make it obvious, make it clear to me that this is the place. And I remember they make an altar call. I go to the front, and when I get to the front, the gentleman that's going to pray for me, he kind of goes like, all right, what are we praying for? And I go, I have no clue why I came to the front. Like, I don't know why I came to the front. And then he goes, okay. So he closes his eyes, puts his hand on my shoulder. And the first thing that comes out of his mouth is, God wants to know this is the place.
This is interesting because a lot of people feel that way when they come into a church. Sometimes that's good for them. It's a healthy church, but they feel uncomfortable at first, which is interesting to me because
Growth isn't comfortable.
yeah,
No, it isn't.
I don't know how to answer that, Bill. Is it weird? Is it weird that I don't know?
No,
how
it's
to answer
not.
that?
Not weird at
No,
all.
it's not weird.
Like,
I mean, it would be a better show if you answered it. I'm saying you just want the show to.
I told
not
you to
be
go back
good.
to the coffee, but he wouldn't
I
listen.
apologize. It's just
Wait. Okay.
well, it's just the reason I say that is because
Why is prayer important to you?
because that's. Repeat the question again. Repeat the
Prayer
question.
helps me,
Prayer helps me.
or is it just prayer helps me? Period.
Oh, it's like I needed to survive.
Yeah,
Live.
I can't.
that's a great answer. That's
I need
from your heart. That's
it's not.
and it's true.
It's not. It doesn't help. It's hard to say. It helps me to do one thing.
Yeah.
It's like oxygen. Like I needed to survive. I needed to live. Like if I don't have that direct communication. Imagine if I wasn't able to be like, help me not curse to these people in front of this meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have that. Like I would have kept it to myself. I would have blown up, and I would have just exploded because I would have been all by myself.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's a great answer. It helps you survive, right? Which helps you live. I say a great live is 90% of the people say that instinctively right away. Live. Like it's beautiful. It's a really cool thing that almost everybody has said live almost immediately.
Which is what he said.
Which is what you
He's
said.
refusing
yeah.
to say
Yeah.
live, but
But I think the only other answer, the only other answer that we've ever gotten to that was survive.
live.
I'm the
Yeah.
oddball. Sorry.
No. Someone else said survive.
Listen, Bill told me not to wear a checkered shirt, and I wore a checkered shirt.
But you know what? You look good.
I
And you
look
know what?
good.
Coincidentally, since we've been talking about Emerge,
He's wearing an emerge.
he's wearing an Emerge.
checkered shirt, which I wasn't supposed to wear in the first place, so I apologize.
Here's my address, Emerge, so you can send us those free tickets.
It's interesting.
No, that's great. Survive, live. That's what it does. It's a hard question to answer because it does so much, right? You could literally list off the things that it does for you and all that jazz. But this has been great. I'm going to try to cut it down for time. Thank you, my very good best friends, for being here. First time of many. And everything we talked about is going to help someone out there somewhere. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. And I thank my guests, Miguel Ortega and Gabriel Lopez, so much for all the wonderful insight that they've given us. And, like I said earlier, follow us on your favorite platforms.
There we go. Yeah.
Subscribe and like and 5-star.
And if there's anything you want the Puerto Rican and Mexican to have a discussion about, just let us know in the comments. And
yes, let them know.
Correction, the two Puerto Ricans on the sofa. We talked about that earlier.
But that reminds me, also go to praykingdomcome.com. We have a prayer request page there. So anything that you need help, healing, hope, motivation for, it doesn't really matter if you need it. Write it down there, and someone will either call you, text you, FaceTime you, email you, whatever's the easiest. So we're always there, but it's right there on the front page of the site. So go praykingdomcome.com. And pop. There's been so much pop in here that I don't know what I'm going to do with
that's good. Hey, you know the difference between a Puerto Rican and a Mexican? It's that Mexicans say beans correctly. They say frijoles.
A todo mi compatriota
Nobody understands
boricua,
that, dude. You
quiero disculpar con mi
English.
amigo Miguel. Se dice habichuela, okay?
No, listen.
Habichuela.
Listen, frijoles for life.
Habichuelas.
What does he say?
It's the same thing in two different languages.
Frijoles.
Is the Mexican way of saying beans.
By the way, Mexico, I love you.
And
my wife is
habichuelas.
Mexican, and I absolutely go crazy about her.
Is how Puerto Ricans say beans.
Well, my wife, I'm obviously
Mexican.
a white fellow, but my wife is Mexican. So reverse bloodlining, I'm about a quarter Mexican.
Frijoles.
Right?
Yeah.
So frijoles.
100%. Yeah, that's it. The only way.
But your son is named Gabriel, so that makes you a quarter Puerto Rican.
Nope.
So habichuelas. You
Maybe
need to
like
be
0.2.
All right, that's all. Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Pop, pop.